Good morning, and I thank you all for joining me as I begin my presentation. Today, as I traverse the realm of possibility within the world of literature, I hope you follow along to gain insight on the knowledge I have learnt during the course of this assignment. My name is Amy, and I will be discussing the topic of the epistolary technique used in Alex Michaelides' novel, The Silent Patient, published in May of 2022. The popular psychological thriller follows the story of Alicia Brenson, written to be a well-known rising artist and a convict that had murdered her husband and that had gone completely silent for 7 years. A psychotherapist, Theo Faber, is a character determined, almost desperate, to unravel the mystery of Alicia's silence and what had truly happened on the night of the murder to have caused it. This book, though dealing with sensitive matters, gives brilliant insight into psychology and how events from a person's past can continue to impact them in the present. Alicia Brenson is a character that doesn't have a voice throughout the novel. With her silence, and with the novel being written only in a third-person narrative that follows Theo exclusively. To give Alicia's character the depth readers need and expect, the author had benefited from using an epistolary technique. The epistolary form is a term that refers to creative works of fiction that are written in the form of documents that are usually known as nonfiction. These documents can take any number of compositions, from news articles to text messages, police reports to transcripts. An entire novel can be written in the way of a Q&A if the author so wished it. In other words, the epistolary narrative can be told by any form of written communication. In usual circumstances, this would be done by the first-person narrative only. Example could be letters, journals, diary entries. However, there would be a small number of exceptions, such as transcripts, newspaper articles, and certain documents that could be written in third-person narrative. In Silent Patient, Alex Michaelides creates a character purely from her diary entries. This form of written communication allows the reader a first-hand account of Alicia's past, guiding the readers to understand her inner character and how her life had made her who she was, creating an intimate and personal connection that would have been hard to create otherwise. This narrative creates a unique voice that adds realism and psychological insight to Alicia's character, furthering the plot much easier than if the author had not bothered to give her a voice. In the epistolary narrative, there are 3 methods that writers can use to create an intricate and authentic view of their characters' thoughts, fears, and desires. The first and most commonly used is monologic writing, where the written communication, such as diary entries and journals, are of only one character. Dialogic writing is the second epistolary method of narrative, and it is when the documentation of correspondence between 2 characters, such as letters or transcripts. The last method is polylogic writing, when the correspondence is exchanged between 2 or more characters, such as police reports or social media exchanges. In this next slide, I have written in the first example of a monologic epilepsy technique written on the first page of the novel. 14th of July. I don't know why I'm writing this. That's not true. Maybe I do know, and I just don't want to admit it to myself. I don't even know what to call it, this thing I'm writing. It feels a little pretentious to call it a diary. It's not like I have anything to say. Anne Frank kept a diary, or Samuel Pepys. Not someone like me. Calling it a journal sounds too academic somehow, as if I should write in it every day, and I don't want to. If it becomes a chore, I'll never keep it up. The epistolary narrative in this short example already brings such depth and life to Alicia in the first 3 sentences. There is a deep yet unknown reason as to why Alicia feels the need to begin writing diary entries, and we see the complexity of her character in her denial and self-consciousness. With that example, in such a short passage, readers have already gained an understanding of who Alicia is, or who she had been, before the beginnings of the novel. That is the art of the epistolary narrative. We, as readers and writers alike, are able to be included in the character's intimate recollection of events. In the example I have shown, readers are able to cultivate a familiar relationship by understanding Alicia's pure, unedited thoughts. I know, as a grown woman, I'd never call my diary a diary. In addition, using diary entries as a method of epistolary technique gives the reader the opportunity to experience the moments of a character's past in the present time, understanding her past before being thrown into her mystery of a present. In this second example, I have chosen another moment of monologic writing that is written in a different tense than the previous example. 17th of August. I've started hiding this diary. There's a loose floorboard in this bare bedroom. I'm keeping it there, out of sight in the space underneath the floorboards. Why? Well, I'm being too honest here in these pages. It's not safe to leave it lying around. I keep imagining Gabriel stumbling across the notebook and fighting his curiosity, but then opening it and starting to read it. If he found out I'm not taking the medication, he'd feel so betrayed, so hurt. I couldn't bear that. Thank God I had this diary to write in. It's keeping me sane. There's no one else I can talk to, no one I can trust. In this short passage, Alicia has chosen, perhaps subconsciously, to write in present tense, despite most of her previous entries being written in the past tense. This allows us to understand that the character is writing this diary entry in the present and not as a recollection of events. The writing, in addition to being in present tense, is short and abrupt. The sentences are quick and the wording seems hurried, which gives the impression that Alicia is feeling more anxious and skittery. From this short passage, the character tells the reader that she is being too honest, and that she hides the diary from her husband, fearing he'll find it and be exposed to her innermost thoughts. The example almost seems as if Alicia is talking straight to the reader, as if the reader has become the diary. This, I believe, fortifies the intimate relationship between character and reader. We are not just onlookers to Alicia's story, we are a part of it. To continue with the forethought of past and present tenses, the application of the epistolary narrative allows a writer to change between all tenses available to literature, from past, present, and future. In this next slide, I have placed my third example from my chosen text, which demonstrates how a piece of work that applies as an epistolary technique can change from one tense to another. I got myself into a state about it and I phoned Gabriel. That was a mistake. I could tell he was busy. The last thing he needed was me calling, freaking out because I think someone is watching the house. Of course, I'm only assuming the man is watching the house. He could be watching me. In the first paragraph of this example, the tense used is past. We can see this by the utilization of was and got. However, in the second, shorter paragraph, we see the diary writer had changed to present tense. We know this by the use of I'm, which is short for I am, and could. While the word could would mostly apply in past tense, in this sentence it is referring to the possibility of it happening in the present, implying the action might be happening at the moment it is being written. Now, there are quite a few disadvantages to writing in an epistolary narrative. However, there is nothing without flaws. We've heard most of the advantages before this point, but I'll refresh your memory. An epistolary narrative creates a more intimate and personal connection with a specific character. It allows the writer to share multiple points of view with the ability to change between tenses, and it advocates for more emphasis on the characters of the story over the plot or structure. The epistolary method, though a beautiful art piece, has its disadvantages as well. In some instances, especially when the technique hasn't been thoroughly experimented with, interactions between characters can get lost among the many other aspects. That can make the interactions, and therefore the relationships between characters, become hard to decipher for the readers. In addition, as the technique is meant to create an intimate relationship, that can cause biases towards specific characters, allowing others to lose their importance within the overall story. In this next slide, I've placed my own example exploring the epistolary technique by the correspondence between a husband and wife, both of whom despise one another for different reasons. As a writer, I love writing dialogue, and therefore the epistolary technique is very interesting to me. I've written my short piece using dialogic writing through letters only. Now, to unveil the inner workings of the epistolary method. How could you, as my fellow writers, write an epistolary novel for yourselves? Well, to begin, when you first decide to write an epistolary novel, you must know who your author is going to be and why they are writing that particular document. Perhaps you're writing from the perspective of a daughter who had just lost her mother, and she's writing what she wishes she could say to her dead mother. Or maybe you're writing a mystery novel through the police reports and transcripts alone. One thing to note is epistolary narratives are similar to dialogue. Think of your document, the one your author is writing, as a one-way conversation. It's dialogue, and it needs to feel natural. Once you've decided on your author and document, you need to stick to what a writer might put in that specific document. In this sense, it can be hard to remember to show, don't tell. Say you're the daughter writing a letter about something that happened to you. It's very unlikely that you'd write down every little detail. It's always best to focus on the noticeable details rather than to describe every finer point that you, as a writer, feel is natural to do. Find that balance between realism and immersion, and you could become an amazing epistolary novelist. Thank you for listening to me as I spoke about my technique, and I hope my little introduction would help you on your way to becoming the famous authors I know you'll become.